This is Performance Anxiety on the Pantheon Podcast Network, and I am your host, Mark. Today's guest makes me wish I had studied more in school. Meet Jason Achilles. This guy's breadth of talent and interests just blows my mind. He's not just a talented musician, but he's also an engineer who has recorded the sounds of Mars from a microphone system he was in charge of on the Mars rover. And apparently this kind of professional diversity runs in the family. By the way, he uses one of the microphones that didn't make it to Mars on this podcast. But the podcast starts off with an admission by Jason about the amount of info he decided to share with me. So we talk about his early musical endeavors, including how he started playing solo and improvisationally. And so by now you know that Jason has worked with NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab, but he's also worked with Jerry Cantrell, Doug Kershaw, Geezer Butler, Dizzy Reed, and a ton of other people. I'm really not sure which of those is more impressive to me. He reveals how he started working with NASA, getting involved with the Mars rover project, and recording exclusively in analog. So he obviously gets more creative the more limitations he has. He also reveals some cool news about a Carnegie Hall performance, putting together a planetarium tour, and thanks to a student at the University of Alabama, Huntsville, he's asked probably the most intelligent question that's ever been asked on this podcast. Thank you, Tristan Tyndall. So check Jason's music out on Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your music. Go to jasonachilles.com for his music as well as Sounds from Mars and more info on upcoming events. He's at Jason Achilles on X. We're at Performance ANX on the socials. And you can keep us going with coffee at ko-fi/performance anxiety or merch at performanceanx.threadless.com. Visiting our sponsors also helps out a lot. So let's check out Jason Achilles on Performance Anxiety on the Pantheon Podcast Network.
All right, try not to choke to death while I do this. Is this an intro or is this like a stinger? Okay. Hey everybody, this is Jason Achilles on Performance Anxiety. I am feeling very anxious, and if you want to hear our latest single, whenever you hear this, whenever you're listening, I guarantee you we've got a new single coming out. Find us, Jason Achilles, on YouTube, music, Spotify, wherever you want. That's it. Go forth and multiply. I have a good microphone that I think I can hook up to the phone here.
Okay.
I'll tell you what. Let me think. Nice to meet you. Hi.
Oh, nice to meet you too.
How's that sound?
Ooh, much better.
There we go.
That sounds really good. All right. Well, cheers.
Cheers. We got that. I was thinking about whiskey, but
I
went for a beer instead, just to be a little safer.
My very special.
Yeah, I've done a few like interviews and podcasts before when I get into the hard stuff, and I realized it's just not a good idea. Does it look okay?
Oh, it's audio only, so no worries.
Okay, that's what I thought. I wasn't sure, but I just, sometimes people,
lie.
So
yeah. Yes.
Yes.
Oh, no. Yeah, no, it's always, I only record the audio, so the video is never recorded.
Okay. Awesome. That's helpful.
I try to get that across. I'm so anal with my audio editing. I don't know how I could possibly make it work in video, because every time somebody does like that little snick or I edit that shit out. I can't do that in video. I mean, everything would just be jump cuts. So I'm like, I just can't do it.
That's why your shit sounds good. Yeah, I noticed that. And by the way, we're going to get into that.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. So I got some crazy shit to tell you about.
Oh, awesome. Well, the way I kind of wanted to start this off is to find out from you, true or false, Spaceballs is the best space documentary ever filmed.
Okay, are we on the record now?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, I have to think about this.
As far as space documentaries, I think Spaceballs ranks right up there.
Oh, God. Okay, this is a question I would have needed to prepare for.
Or are you, as far as documentaries of space concerned, more of like a 2001 Space Odyssey kind of guy?
Well, I would think Okay, let me think here. I want to give you a good answer on this. I would think that the bureaucratic aspect of Spaceballs is absolutely going to be more authentic to future exploration than anything else, because it's a total clusterfuck.
Yeah.
But do we have to watch our language, by the way?
Not at all.
Okay. Yeah, I think the absolute I don't know, trying to find a good word right now, but the complete silliness of it all is probably more realistic to what one would expect from
large government agencies in charge
from our future. Yeah. That's my answer.
That's perfect. That's perfect. So you might be the guest with the most diverse professional endeavors in the history of this podcast. So,
well, that's saying something.
I've had some weird ones, but none, I don't think anything that's quite as diverse as what you're involved in. But
well, it's an odd pairing. We'll go with that. How about that?
It sure is. So I want to find out a little bit more about how they came together in you. And I have to say too, I and for your listeners too, that like I gave you nothing. Except when you came, because, we were just introduced through our mutual friend and then through Jamie. And I thought it would actually be, I was kind of fucking with you, but sort of, in a passive way, just like, I'm just not going to tell this guy anything and see what he digs up, because it's, sure. Yeah. You find one thing, you're like, this doesn't make sense. Exactly.
And then there's some other stuff that's like really buried, like three layers deep that, I don't know.
I did my best, and I will mention that I was really under the weather last week, and so I had to reschedule another podcast for yesterday. So I was kind of preparing for both at the same time. So
screw that guy.
I'm hoping I don't get them mixed up. So
that would actually be hilarious. And if you did mix them up, I'm not going to tell you.
So when did you start playing with George Thorogood?
Oh, that was funny enough. I did actually play a show and we shared a stage with George Thorogood. And that was when I was playing bass for the Raging Cajun himself, Mr. Doug Kershaw.
Doug Kershaw, yeah.
Yeah, see, this is one that didn't end up on your list.
Actually, I have that somewhere on here.
All right, well done. Yeah, I played... I knew his son, Tyler Kershaw, locally. We met through mutual friends, and I wound up playing bass for him for a number of gigs over the years. Most recently, we did one kind of in the middle of the pandemic, which was a whole story, and that's a podcast, that one show.
Oh, wow.
But we played a large, I think it was a benefit of some sort, but it was a big show, and it was here in Southern California, outside of LA, and George Thorogood shared the stage with us. We didn't play with him, but that was also the time that I did get to share the stage with Robbie Krieger from The Doors, and he came up and played a song with us, and we met basically on stage. He walks up, and I'm playing bass up there. He comes up and kind of like looks at me. I look at him and I'm like, "Hey, man." He's like, where do I go? I'm like, "I think right there." He's like, "Okay." And then just big smiles, and we started playing. And that was awesome.
It's funny because I actually have a Robbie Krieger reference in my notes. So.
Oh, he was delightful. That's one of my favorite live photos. We both just. It's hilarious because you look at the photo, it looks like we're like old buddies, and we really had met like 35 seconds before that photo was taken.
He's a damn professional.
Yeah.
So, all right. So
throw me some other zingers. Let's see if we can draw the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon back to it.
Okay. So I would eventually want to get into how you got into music in the first place. But the way we get Robbie Krieger into this is that I was listening to your album Come Down. And I love that album. That is so good. I'm going to end up getting a physical copy of that, because if I don't have it, if I don't buy a physical copy, I don't feel like I've actually.
Do you have vinyl, like a record player?
Yes, I do.
I got you. I'll save a vinyl for you.
Oh, dude, that would be amazing.
We made 250 like signed, or not, well, like numbered, limited edition releases when I got them printed, and I've got about make the last 100 or so still
Oh, well, we'll try to get rid of those for you here while we're at it.
That would be amazing because I need to sell those damn things.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. Before you skip over this ad, give me 1 minute. Like most podcasts, I pick sponsors carefully and I use the products that advertise here. Pure Spectrum CBD is a product that has been really beneficial for me. They have a wide variety of great products that can be used on a daily or as needed basis. I've been using the tincture every day and it's been wonderful for easing anxiety. And I absolutely love the isolate. I use it instead of acetaminophen or ibuprofen, and it's worked so well for the relief of aches and pains. They also have soaks, lotions, salves, gummies, and more, plus an entire line for fitness recovery. They even have products for your pets. See everything they offer at purespectrumcbd.com. And if you have questions, they're there to help. They helped me when I had no idea where to start. After you fill your cart, use code PerformanceANX for 15% off your purchase. Pure Spectrum CBD, Pure Spectrum CBD, Pure Spectrum CBD. Well, I was listening to that, and it's such a cool album. It reminds me a lot of the like these great instrumental albums I would get in the late 80s, early 90s. You know, when like bands like, and this is my notes here, like Robbie Krieger put out that No Obla on that IRS's No Speak label. You know, you get a guy who's an amazing guitarist, and he just puts out this solo album that just has this feel to it. It's different from the Doors.
Right.
Or like Steve Howe puts out these albums, and you know, it's like the stuff that he took to Yes, and Yes said no. And so he did a solo album.
The name of the band.
Yeah.
or the name of the album, no.
That's a side project, no. But it has that.
That's very kind of you, man. I really, that's very, very high praise. I really appreciate it. You obviously really gave it a good listen too, because there's definitely some, there's some allusion to some of that stuff in there. Yeah.
It is so good. I've enjoyed it so much.
Thanks, man.
Particularly the songs Panhandle and is it Sunrise, I believe is the first track, right? Yeah, Sunrise.
Yeah. Sunrise.
Oh, those two tracks are my favorites on the album.
Funny story about Sunrise. So there's a very long version. I'll try. The short version is I was in a band prior to that called Black Belt Karate. And the band, basically the singer quit pretty much on my birthday, which was in December. And I was pretty crushed. You know, that was the second time this same singer had quit on me with a project we were doing. And I was feeling pretty devastated about the whole thing. And, you know, not just with him, but also just the whole idea of getting the rug pulled out from under you time and time again. And, you know, like, okay, we got to rethink something. You know, I'm not 19 years old anymore. Like, I got to, like, you know, this is your livelihood. You can't just put it in the hands of somebody, you know, your CEO one day is just like, we're done. And you're like, what do I do? I'm like, you know,
yeah, exactly.
And so basically so the band collapsed. It's my birthday. It was a big, you know, big time, big day, big, one of those, you know, big number birthdays too. And the band had a gig booked like 3 weeks later or something like that in mid-January.
Oh no.
And so I thought about it for, I don't know, a brief amount of time. And then I hit up the booker, the promoter for the show. It was at Silver Lake Lounge here in LA, a little spot. And I said, hey, listen, the band can't do the gig, but I'm going to do it anyway. And she says, okay, sure. What are you going to do? And I'm like, don't worry about that. But we'll put it together.
Never you mind.
Okay. Yeah. She says, okay, well, what do you want me to bill it as? I said, just put my name on it for now and we'll figure it out later. And then I hit up a drummer who had been sort of filling in for us towards the end of the band because our main drummer at the time, one of my best friends here in town, Ryan Brown, had picked up a gig playing drums for Dweezil Zappa, and so was becoming increasingly unavailable. Yeah, it's
nice.
Needless to say, he's a pretty good drummer.
Yeah, I would say so.
And by that we mean, incredible, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Literally playing like one of the hardest drum gigs on earth for a rock and roll player. You know?
Absolutely.
So he taught at MI a lot. He had one of his students, this kid named Brett Roca, who had been filling in for us on a couple gigs when Ryan couldn't do them. We were sort of like, okay, if you find a sub that we can keep playing, then the band can keep rolling, with you as a part of it. And so I hit up Brett and I said, hey, what are you doing? January 17th. He's like, oh, I don't know. What's up? I'm like, all right, we got a gig. He's like, okay, cool. It's a band. I'm like, no. And he said, okay, what are we playing? And I said, we'll figure it out. Don't worry. Okay. So I had him come down to the studio, I don't know, like a week later or something. I got a spot downtown and we started playing and we wrote Sunrise. And it was a groove that came from that bass lick. And I'd never done any of this looping stuff. So for people that will see as you check out online, a lot of our stuff is, live we play, it's all loop based. It's just me and a drummer. We're a 2-piece.
Right. Yeah.
And so for this gig, I was able to get, at the time, I didn't know that's what it was going to turn into, but we ended up writing this song where it required a loop because I'd set a bass loop and then I had a rhythm guitar that would play over it with the changes that you hear in the song. And then I'm playing a lead on top of that, but there's no click or anything. And so with the loops, I had to be the one to play the bass and then lock the guitar into that, rhythm guitar into that. And the live version sounds almost identical to the way it sounds on the record because the arrangement, it works that way. But we wrote, recorded, and I mixed that song in 3 days. And that was all analog, fully analog. So it was really, really fast. And that became the first track on that record. And yeah, we just did it piece by piece. I had Brett throw down the drums. I looped a bass on it, but I played the whole thing all the way through, even though it's a looping pattern. And I think I made him do it in one take, the whole song in one take. So that's usually people, and without a click or any reference track. So basically that, and it still to this day, it's one of my favorite things that, sometimes it's just those, like, you're not thinking about it. The guitar melody was kind of like, I think maybe it was like halfway worked out, but like all the lead playing you hear on that, it was improvised, in the moment.
Oh, wow.
And we'd probably structured it into the sense of like, there's like kind of a breakdown section, like, okay, you'll break down to this marching pattern, the thing you hear in the middle, and I'll fill it up with something, know. Yeah. But anyway, so it's cool that you dig that one because it was start to finish, done to mixed in 3 days. And then that started my instrumentalist career.
That's amazing. Oh my gosh. I will throw this out there. I don't know if I'll tell this story, but you should listen to the episode I did with Trey Gunn. It's a really early one, but he talks about a looping mishap he had. And,
oh, dude, I've toured through Europe where they have different power and like I'd be curious to hear if there's a looping mishap we haven't had. So yeah, I would like to hear it.
I'll tell you real quick, and then you can go back and listen. It's better when Trey tells it because I'm going to condense it here real quick. But yeah, he was touring with a trio, and I don't remember if it was Brian Bromberg or somebody else. It was a trio, okay. And what would happen is they would play a bit of the set, and the other two guys would go off stage, and Trey would do a solo piece, and he would build it up. So he would play a bit. Like
a looping solo piece kind of thing? Yeah.
Exactly. So each piece he would play, he would save it, and he would loop, and it's like, 8 tracks or eight different loops, and everything's going on, and he's got to build it up live as he's going. So he's got his in-ear monitors, and he's playing it, and it's sounding really awesome. And looking out in the audience, and everybody's just like, oh, no. Jaws drop, and he's like, "This is coming off awesome. This is must be even better than it sounds to me." So,
was it like muted or something? Or
what happened was they take an intermission, and he goes off stage, and the guys and the two other guys are just like, "What was that?" And he goes, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "What were you playing?" He's like, "Well, the same thing I play every night." And they said, "No, it wasn't coming. Your looper wasn't coming across into the house. He's like, you would play something and then it would stop. And then you would play something else. He's like, we thought you were improvising on like this whole other level. So they said it was,
no idea. The worst part is he had no idea.
Exactly.
Maybe that's the best part, actually.
We thought it was amazing. And I think he actually has a recording of it. He said, there's this people in the audience just listening to that.
It's just the layers, but with nothing underneath them.
Exactly. Like one layer.
And all the space and the awkward, what would to everybody else would be awkward space. But because he's feeling it, he's delivering this big, incredibly awkward thing, but completely comfortably.
Exactly. And they said it was amazing. They thought he was doing improv on a whole other level that they couldn't reach. So it's one of my favorite stories on this podcast.
At least he kept going.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Well, he didn't even know there was a problem.
So we've never had a problem where we didn't know there was a problem. But the nice thing about when you're doing fully instrumental stuff, especially if there's any sort of experimental nature to it, which I'd say, we're in there. We're not, completely wacky, but we're definitely experimenting with some weird things. And
yeah, for sure.
The nice thing about that is that nobody really knows what you're doing. So we've had times where just everything just took a shit, or like the looper started playing backwards or started looping and like decided to start in the middle of the thing. And you just act like you meant it.
Right.
And we realized that really early on. It was one of our first, I think it was our first tour through the UK because it was a long one. And, we were still figuring, I didn't have a good power supply back then. So, things would get weird. I remember one club we played where like there was power coming back through the guitar, like a direct line or something that should not have power. You know what I mean? And it was feeding back into the looper. And these loopers, they sound amazing, the ones that we use, but they are very delicate to like any weird electrical mishap at all. And so you'd get like wonky stuff going on then. But we just sort of realized quickly, like, well, nobody actually knows what we're doing. So the rule we came up with is no matter what happens, the drums keep going.
Okay.
No matter what. If I stop, unless I like die of a heart attack on stage, you keep going until I say otherwise, and just act like you belong there, and we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And
I love that. That is awesome. That's why I love improvisational anything. I've done some improvisational comedy, and when it goes south, that's my favorite part.
Well, that's your best opportunity for like really creating something cool.
Yeah. So I imagine, I'm not a musician, but I imagine that it's kind of similar for the right mindset. If you're comfortable with improv, that's got to be where some amazing things happen.
Well, we had another gig. I'm thinking about it now. This wasn't exactly improv in the way we were talking about it, but we got to a gig. It was like this was in somewhere outside of Manchester. It was like real, this is like more of a punk vibe, but we were playing with some really screaming punk bands. Most of them were complete sweethearts, but the music was pretty aggressive. We were doing like our, instrumental sort of space rock thing, but my guitar just stopped working, would not work. And I didn't have a backup. Oh. And I play left-handed.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So there are guitar players there, like you can use ours, but it was right-handed. So I ended up doing our entire set on a right-handed guitar, strung right-handed.
But you're playing left-handed. Oh my God.
So I played it upside down, the whole thing. And like, and actually, honestly, harder than playing it was like trying to figure out how to hold it, right? Because now your arms hitting where the buttons are because it's flipped over in the body.
Yeah.
And like it had one where like they were really close to the edge, so that was the, and then eventually you sort of tape them in place. And you figure, but that was a different kind of improv.
Oh my God.
But I don't know how the hell we did it, but somehow we got through that gig. And anyway.
I love stuff. I love stories like that. So what got you into music in the first place? I mean, was there a whole lot of it played in the house, or your parents musicians or musically inclined at all, or? Yeah.
Kind of all the above.
Okay.
Yeah. My father especially comes from he's a Greek. My father was a Greek immigrant, and he was the only one to leave Greece. But so when we travel back to visit the family, like it's just sort of music is in the gene pool very, very strongly in my, and some of them do it professionally.
Oh, cool.
But there's, well, one of my cousins is a concert flautist in the Thessaloniki, which is the second biggest city in Greece.
Okay.
But that's his side gig. His main gig is he's a cardiologist. So,
so that runs in the family too. That the kind of dichotomy.
Yeah, that's what you're dealing with. But like, even, the older relatives, you would just go, and people with no musical training would immediately, like, they'd, be singing folk songs, but immediately burst into like perfect harmony movement over stuff that probably had never been written down, or if it was, I've never seen it. So there's that side of it. My father's an amazing musician. He's 88 years old and still has like one of the most beautiful tenor voices. It's incredible. Obviously, I am not a tenor, as you figured out. I like to sing, but not like as like choirs and stuff.
Right. And
then my mom's side of the family has, I'd say, more musical appreciation, but the more of the inherent talent definitely came from my dad's side. And then when I was young, we I don't know, I think it was less that I was in love with music and more that like I was in love with sound that was organized as music, if that makes any sense.
Okay.
Like one of my favorite records was Peter and the Wolf, the Prokofiev Peter and the Wolf.
Yes. Oh yeah.
And it was on actual vinyl. And apparently, I don't remember this, but apparently before I was old enough to speak or walk or something, my cousins said that I would just sit there and they'd put the record on and like I'd just be like sitting there in front of the thing and I wouldn't move for like an hour.
Wow.
And
gosh.
So, which is interesting because when I first started playing guitar, I wouldn't sit there and practice scales. I'm still not very I work to try and get a few technical noodle things in there that are, those cool moments of flash and stuff.
Right,
But what I ended up doing, and I think back on this now more than as I would sit and I would just play one note like over and over for like 10 minutes, trying to get that note to like resonate, a certain way that had, depending where you hit it on the string and the angle of the attack of the pick or what you're using as a pick or your fingers. And, I borrowed like a crappy little Strat from a buddy of mine,
Yeah.
But when I think back on it now, I was much more interested in the sound of it than the and melodies than I was in the like sort of the shredding aspect.
Okay.
Which I wish I could do that stuff more. and I, like that's when I practice, that's what I have to work on. I was like trying to like, okay, you really want to do like a fast lick here. Like there's times in a song where like you want it to be a flamboyant guitar part, you know what I mean? And then like, so I have to like work up to that or like wrestle with it for a few days to, get it there. But it was, for me, I guess it always came from the sound first part played,
I understand what you're saying now. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, that was a long answer. I'm sorry.
I love long answers. Unless I have to talk.
It's a long-form podcast.
Yeah, exactly. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors.
But so it kind of, I didn't decide I was going to be a musician professionally, quote unquote, until I guess junior year of high school. Okay. And when you had to choose a major, and it was like, okay, I'm doing music.
Were you also into science at that time? Because in addition to being a touring musician and touring with people like the aforementioned Doug Kershaw, but Geezer Butler, and
the Geezer story was a failed tour. I can tell you that story. We never made it on the road. I rehearsed with them for about a week and a half. And we'll get back to that, but it was cool to play those guys, yeah, for sure.
And I don't know if this is most recently, but Jerry Cantrell from Alice in Chains.
That was a tour, yeah. I was doing keyboards on that one.
But you also have a side gig with NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab.
Yeah, there's that.
So was science big for you in school too, or did that come later after musical experience?
So I remember falling in love with space at an early age. With music and space were like, that was both of those things were, I remember being in kindergarten actually. And I specifically remember our kindergarten teacher coming out one day and showing us a model of an orrery, it's a model of the solar system where it's like, it moves around itself.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Like a complicated version of an orrery would be the Dark Crystal, when Augure's castle, when she has that crazy, everything flying around everywhere.
Oh,
that's an orrery. But the simple version is almost like a mobile, like, or mobile, however you say it, where it's like hangs from a string and then they move around each other.
Mm-hmm.
So he showed us a model of the solar system. And I remember, well, you remember feeling something and then you look back on it X amount of time later and then you understand. So what I remember thinking when he showed us a model of the solar system is that to me, it just made sense.
Oh, wow.
In a geometric way, like in a physical movement sort of way.
Okay.
And I guess I didn't realize at the time, but it seemed like it clicked easier with me than maybe it did with some other people.
Yeah. Being probably one of them.
Well, it's just certain people. Yeah. We all have our gifts and our way of learning. Some people it's very visual. Well, anyway, I don't know.
No, I'm definitely one of the visual ones.
Okay. So, right. So for this, it was just something about the motion of it. And to me, it's kind of like the way it's sort of like, okay, it's like a big Frisbee kind of, and like, no matter how you turn it or look at it, it's still made the same. Like even if you oriented it sideways, like, yeah, I still get it. And I think that's sometimes where people get thrown off in that sense. So it made sense to me. And that kind of like, I think that same understanding sort of like carried on to, later when I was working on the Perseverance rover and some of the papers that I submitted to Planetary Science Conference and stuff sort of would involve novel ways of collaborating different systems together on that rover that were sort of unrelated. But to me, it makes sense because like if it's a closed system, I feel like I can wrap my head around it. Like a rover, it's sitting in there, it's everything it can do and all the options available to you, you can see from the angles, like physically, you can move around, like they're all there,
Okay, I see what you're saying, yeah.
Whereas opposed to like something like economics, or I just feel like there's no end in sight, and therefore I can't compartmentalize it in my brain to where like it makes sense to me, so I just give up. In the beginning.
So like
politics or history.
The rover,
I like closed systems. Yeah,
the rover, like you said, a closed system. There's a finite amount of possibilities. That
right.
I mean, there's a lot of possibilities, but there are certain parameters within that system.
Right, and there might be a lot more possibilities than somebody might think from initially looking at it, but at the end of the day, you can count the number of parts on that thing, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
and your viewpoint might be a little more unique than somebody who has just been a straight scientist since high school.
Well, so sort of to that same level, that's the same reason why I find that all the best I still record on analog tape.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, Sunrise, that whole album that we did, I printed I got it pressed as vinyl because it was all recorded or, analog anyway. And I figured might as well keep it in that medium,
That is awesome.
But the restrictions of recording analog are what I find that really get the best out of me.
That's a recurring theme on this podcast is having boundaries and limitations stretches your creativity.
Yeah. I mean, different people work like that's one of the many reasons actually that I never got into like a band like Radiohead, which part of it was because that same singer loved them. And so then therefore I was going to dislike them on principle. But I really don't enjoy the idea that like, okay, we can take anything and put it in here and there's no limit. Like I need limits. For me, I think I personally believe that a large part of the definition of what is art is beauty by design through limitation or something there. There's at least for me, that's what inspires me is the limitation. Art is beauty by design. And then for me, the inspiring part is requiring limitations in there. Doing the most with the least amount of tools or something. I really dig that.
Awesome.
And then, if you once you finally get to where you hit a wall, then you reach for more tools,
Yeah.
But like, really, what can you do with this damn little screwdriver? I find that more exciting than like just, I don't know.
I want to learn a little how you got involved with this, but first, before we get into that, I want to know a little bit more about your musical background. So, was guitar the first thing you learned, or was it piano, or was it
just piano? Yeah, I remember seeing a TV broadcast of Vladimir Horowitz, the great pianist, which at the time I didn't know he was great. I just knew I really liked it. I was like 5 years old. I'm like, who's that? And he just would smash the piano, and he had these huge hands, but it would just sound like I don't know. It was those things. It was the sound of this giant sound. And so I told my parents, I want to do that, because they were really cool about it. And there's a good approach for parents to take, where like, okay, we're going to make you must learn music, but we'll let you choose the instrument. And so I'm like, okay, piano. And they're like, ugh. Yeah. Because it's, it's not cheap. You couldn't get cheap keyboards back then, I mean, yeah, now it's a little easier, but.
Yeah, tell me, I inherited a piano a few years too late for my kids. Although my son has never had a piano lesson in his life, can just play amazingly by ear. It's incredible. And he's like 20. He just started playing. But they all did take band in high school. They're all in the marching band. He played tuba. My oldest, my daughter, she played trombone, and my youngest daughter played French horn. So they've all, since like elementary school, have all been playing music. So
I was going to say French horn rehearsal versus tuba must be interesting.
Oh my God. My house was a cacophony for years, because the only instrument we bought was the trumpet. Because
so all the rest are rented or from the school or whatever.
Yeah. So, but they would bring him home. I have no idea how the fuck I kept it. I got a tuba home in my car. And 3 kids.
Yeah. Well, you can put the kids in the trunk.
They would, surf on the back or strap them to the hood or something.
It's like Teen Wolf style.
Oh, but getting the 3 of them together to learn their concert pieces or their marching band pieces. Oh, I mean, once they got it was amazing.
You're a patient individual.
Oh, well, I love music, and I never really had the opportunity to take lessons and stuff until I was older. And it was, at that point, it was, I don't know. I don't want to say it's too late, because it's never too late, but I had other things in mind. But
yeah, you definitely want to start. If you got a kid, you want to start them on music. Like they got me into it. Like, I think I was like maybe 7 years old. And that's kind of like, that's like on the later side, in terms of, because you want it to be, if you really want to be amazing, or you want your kid to be amazing, I mean, it's got to you got to start them at like not far off from when they're learning language,
out the womb.
Yeah. Right. Well, so I was lucky in that regard, because I did have music coming in, I just didn't know how to articulate it. I would just but yeah.
All right. So, did you start recording it? Because I found some interesting stuff under your name, and I want to find out a little bit more. I want to find out a little bit more about this, and I want to see, did this stuff happen before working with NASA? And then I also kind of want to, well, I definitely want to find out how you started working with NASA. Did you make the contact, or did they see something you had done on your own? But I saw a few things like Schismatique #2 and $1 Million Man. That sounds like you're more focusing on composition. Is that something that you're doing in between rock music, or is that something that you were focusing on before?
$1 Million Man's actually a Lana Del Rey cover.
Okay.
And that
don't know too much about her stuff. So
my friend that I recorded that with, her name's Hannah Piranha, and she's in England. And yeah, she's amazing.
You said I was the most exotic flower, holding me tight in our final hour. I don't know how you convinced them to get them, but I don't know what you...
I'm trying to remember how... Oh, we first met when she had a band that was touring through the States. And I'd heard that this band from the UK needed a place to stay, and I really wanted to tour the UK. And I'm like, I bet maybe if I extend my, floor to these touring Brits, they'll help me out in the UK.
A little quid pro quo.
Yeah, and I was like, and then I saw the band. It was her and then another girl and then 2 guys. I'm like, all right, so it's a couple chicks in the band. It won't get too crazy. Yeah. Oh my God. So they took me up on the offer, and I am still good friends still friends with all of them and very good friends with her in particular.
Okay.
But yeah, oh my God, dude, they like, yeah, dude. And I mean, Brits in general, it's just say they know how to,
they can party.
They know how to party.
Yeah.
But we became friends and we ended up doing a bunch of work together, like production work. And we did that one actually overseas. So she was in England. I was here. It was a song she wanted to do. And I'm like, Lana Del Rey, really? Okay. But she picked the song and then recorded her part for it, which she was playing, I think. Was she playing that one? Was it violin? Yeah, violin, I think. She plays like a million instruments and one day she'll just decide, I want to learn harp. And then 3 months later, she's playing virtuoso harp. But she started as a violinist. And she recorded her part, sent it to me. I recorded mine, was sent back. But that's what that song was.
Okay.
It's out there now. People can hear it. It's turned out really good, actually. I was really stoked on that.
Yeah, I liked it a lot. And I liked Schismatique #2. I've heard the live version and the studio version. So was that done for something particular? Were you focusing more on composition at that point? Or was that just in the mix of everything you were doing?
So Schismatique is, so it's an fully orchestral performance. It's actually never been performed live. The video is of the recording session of it, but that's the only time it's never, but actually, so I can tell people, it's going to be performed live for the first time ever in April 2024 at Carnegie Hall.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Dude, that's amazing.
Which is insane. I think it's middle of April, like April 16th or something like that. But
oh my gosh. Yeah, that's incredible.
So it'll get its debut live performance at,
Oh, congratulations. That's fantastic.
So I'll be obviously flying to New York to check that out.
Oh my gosh. Man, hey, if you ever need a photographer, let me know.
You're not around there, are you?
No, but it's not too far. I got family up that way. I'm in Virginia. I got family in Jersey, so
that's not That's not too bad.
Yeah.
All right, we'll discuss that.
All right.
I'm not performing. I'm just going to sit in the audience, have a drink before the show, and
Oh, okay.
But so that was actually a piece that I wrote when I was in college. It was written 20 years before it was recorded.
Oh, wow.
Close to it. And I recorded when I wrote it. It was for an undergraduate composer recital at UC Berkeley, where I was in college. It wasn't for school credit or anything, but they were like, if you want to write something, we will have a performance space and you can have it performed or perform it yourself. And so I wrote it as a piano piece, but in my mind, it was always going to be like this orchestral. Like I heard it as an orchestral piece. So what I was writing was sort of like a piano reduction of that. And I knew a great pianist there. Like it was harder than anything I could play on piano. So I couldn't play it, but I could play it very slowly enough to, and this was written by hand. I didn't use it, so.
Oh my God.
With a pencil in the rehearsal room, I spent weeks on the damn thing. And it's like, was it like 5-7 minutes long? I can't remember.
I think it's about 6 something. I have to look it up real quick, but yeah.
It's a lot of notes.
So, and is that what you studied in college? Was composition or?
Yeah, like theory and composition. I did not. I elected to not try and pursue a conservatory because I didn't want to be performance based. That's kind of why one of the reasons I fell in love with rock and roll, because like in rock and roll, like mistakes can actually be cool.
Oh hell yeah, Matthew Sweet's made a career out of that.
Likes that. And I would get really like,
improv classical would be amazing.
Yeah, they kind of frown on that, it turns out.
That would be amazing though.
I know, but yeah.
I'm telling you, all right, we gotta figure out, that's my next project. After the Spinal Tap thing is done, I'm gonna figure out some kind of classical improv troupe.
Well, ever since the modern, what's the modern era, because there's Baroque, classical, romantic, and contemporary. In the contemporary era now, you wouldn't know if something's improvised or not because it's all atonal nonsense anyway. You just do whatever you want. How do you know they wrote it? Yeah, just play it.
Okay, you make a good point.
Pretend you're on tour in the UK.
Yeah,
Make it up. And yes, I'm shitting on an entire movement of music.
Hey, what are they going to do?
Well, there are masters of composition within that genre, like Schoenberg and so forth. But a lot of it's just like, come on, you guys are killing me.
So how did you get involved with NASA? How did that whole connection start?
So okay, the condensed version. We'll try. Let's see here. I basically, it's hard to explain. I just sort of started really feeling like there was something missing in my life in terms of an obvious intellectual based outpouring of something. But like still in a creative way, I guess. Now that I'm thinking about it. Because I didn't want to just go and engineer things for other people, but I wanted to like contribute creative ideas to the scientific world, or to the space world, whether it's scientific or and I don't know. It was just sort of like it just sort of bubbled up as this like with this weird sense of urgency, like you have to do this, you have to try. If you don't, you're going to regret it forever. I don't know how to explain it better than that, but
I know the feeling though. I don't
know. I don't really know where it came from, but it just it was like something that was dormant for decades,
I know exactly what you're feeling because I do a lot of concert photography. And so on a not as scientific a level, I know exactly how you feel because I went to college for photography, did it for, professionally for like a decade. And then when we had kids, I got a real job. And so
tried my best to avoid those.
Man, I know. Once you got 3 kids, you gotta do something a little.
Well, as far as I'm aware, I don't have any of those. So
none that you're responsible for.
Well, that's so far,
So, but when I put that down, I was still shooting for myself and all. But I kind of felt this. I needed to do something more creative, and through the podcast, I've made some really awesome friends, and we talked about photography a little bit with some who were interested, and they said, well, hey, we're going to be in the area, bring your camera and shoot a show. And I gotta give all the credit to Kelly Scott from Failure because he got me my first photo pass when they came in like 2019. It was just 2018, 2019, somewhere around there. And I shot their show at the 930 Club here in DC. And that just kind of rekindled everything.
By the way, yes. You just threw out the magic word that it's all about the band Failure. Oh, that's the podcast. Yep. That's the one, the Ken Andrews one that you did. That's the one I want to talk to you about.
Oh, okay. Awesome.
You answered some long-standing questions in my mind about an experience I had with Ken.
Oh, really? Is this something I can keep on the podcast?
Oh, yeah. No, it's not bad at all.
Oh,
but
good.
It answers a lot of, but anyway.
So, this isn't a podcast about me, so we'll turn it back to you here in a second. But that's,
but it's just, I was waiting for that to come up so I could time to strike.
Oh, awesome. And actually, Greg's the only one I haven't had on the podcast yet, so I'm trying to have Greg Edwards on at some point, and or his wife Karina Round, because I know I got it in on both sides, but I can't get that one to go yet. No one's right. No one's pulling the trigger on that one yet, but anyway. So,
well, should we? Do you want me to tell you? Should we jump?
Yeah, let's jump into it.
Yeah, I don't want to interrupt you though, because you were like we were going down.
I'm talking about myself.
Creative,
Nobody is tuning into this podcast. Both of my listeners do not tune into this podcast to listen to me.
You better have more than both your listeners, because we got us. Hello, listeners.
Hey guys,
this might be part that you edit out.
Yeah.
So I was scrolling through and by the way, you're an excellent interviewer. And
thank you very much.
You're talking about the editing thing. I had a conversation about that the other day. Like, well-edited podcasts make all the difference in the world, and not for content like people might think, but just to keep it flowing smoothly.
I agree completely.
But I was going down the list and I saw Ken Andrews. I'm like, oh, cool. I got to check this out. So when I first moved to LA, after getting fired from a couple of recording studios, I had lied myself into a gig as a live sound guy because that's how you get a gig as a live sound guy. You lie and you've done it before, and everybody understands you're lying, but that's just the way it's done. It's fine, and you got the balls to lie, so fine.
Right. It's part of the process.
Turn a couple knobs, but there was this guy there that started. He would come again. There was this band that was led by Jack Tempchin, who was a songwriter for the Eagles.
Okay.
He wrote two of their hits that are on one of the highest selling albums of all time.
Oh wow, okay, yeah.
And he would show up, and he was just a super groovy guy. I don't know if he was stoned all the time or just seemed that way, but just he would I think he would, out of his own money, if I remember right, just pay to rent the club out on Mondays. They would call it a Big Monday. He had this incredible backing band full of guys like Waddy Wachtel, on guitar.
Yeah.
People like that. Rick, the bass player from Crazy Horse. And they would play cover tunes with Terry Reid singing as one of the singers. And Bernard Fowler was one of the backup singers for the Stones. And that was the band that would play every Monday night. And then on top of that, let's say Joe Walsh is in town, has a day off. Joe Walsh comes to this and plays there. And this club, it was the cap was 72 people.
Holy God!
Yeah, this is the joint down on going to Robertson, back when it was a tiny little spot.
That's amazing.
So they would bring their own sound guy for these gigs. They didn't want to screw around with some house sound guy schlep like me, So they brought their own guy, who was this guy Neil, who was amazing. One of the grumpiest Canadians I've ever met in my life, but an incredibly talented sound guy, and actually did very, very much did right by me. It's fun he was really grumpy though, but very talented sound guy, actually knew where the treble knob was on the lead vocal. 85% of sound guys, at least back then, just people have figured it out a little better nowadays.
Yeah.
But every venue you go, everything that you can never understand the damn vocals.
Oh, it's so muddy.
They turn it up and then they get feedback, so they kill the treble. And you're like, well, why don't you just turn it back down and make it articulate?
Yeah, exactly.
So this guy, he knew how to do that, and he would drive the system to the brink of disaster, but make it sound great. So I got to know him just, every week. And then I think it was a couple years. I think I was not working there anymore at the time. And he's like, hey, I got a couple tours coming up. We need a roadie schlep / bitch. I think they literally, I got paid $350 a week or something like that to go on tour. And one of those, or two of those tours, were with Year of the Rabbit.
Oh, wow. Oh,
and Andrew's band after Failure and On. And so I was like, hell yeah, because I'd never been on tour playing one or working one. I figured this is a great way to learn, get the ropes, see what it's like out there.
Yeah.
Year and the Rabbit were on Elektra, I think. And so they had major label support. We were in a band, we were in a bus, a tour bus.
Mm-hmm.
And we did 2 tours. I don't remember the order. I think the first one was a month out, just band by itself. And then, if I remember it, then the second one I did with them was a couple weeks out, opening for A Perfect Circle, which was rad.
That's awesome. Oh my gosh.
And that was cool because then I got to be sort of stage manager, the guy who goes out and checks the amp when everybody's sitting there. And of course I had to do the guitar. I was doing it upside down, right? Because but,
everybody else is righty.
Yeah, so you're playing for couple thousand people, but just a couple chords.
Yeah, it still counts.
And then they're like, "Where's the band?" You're like, "Yeah, shut up, they're coming."
They see you walk out and they're like, "Yeah." And
no. And actually, it was amazing too because Jeff Garber in that band, he was running. If I remember right, he was running definitely one AC30, but he might have had 2 chained together. And it was just so loud that even in giant, they weren't arenas, but they were, a couple thousand seaters.
Yeah. Larger venues.
Neil was like, no, you got to turn down on his stage volume was too loud just with these 2, because it's just all mid-range death coming out. But anyway, but it was interesting because I remember just being there and the vibe on the band was just, there was something off and I didn't know what it was. And I don't mind telling you this now because basically Ken answered, he talked about all this on your podcast. So, but I didn't know what was going on. It didn't make sense to me. I'm thinking dude, if I was signed to Elektra with a band, I'd be I'd be the happiest guy in the universe. And there was just this sullen kind of thing. And part of that was, the attitude of the band, and that's just their vibe. And like, sure, I get that too, but it was more than that. And I couldn't quite figure it out. And then I listened to your, and all these years, I did,
it's been weighing on you.
Well, it was just sort of like this weird thing in the back of your mind. You're like, that was a strange experience. And I just never got an answer to it. I listened to your podcast, and Ken tells the whole story about how he was basically crushed by the record labels.
Yeah. And
then never going to do that again. And then got this opportunity with You're the Rabbit. And I think somebody talked him into doing it or something. It was Tim, right?
I think, Tim Dow.
Yeah, like he's like, dude, I'll put the band together, just get it going. And Tim got the guys, Jeff and Saul, I think, right? Was that his name, bass player?
I think I'm blanking on it right now, but
that guy was he was awesome. He was a sweetheart. I mean, and I'm, when you're a roadie and your job is to shut up, do what you're told. Don't even pretend you're like one of the band guys. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like, I was already like, okay, I won't say, but it was a lot of sort of observing things. But the way Ken talked about that whole experience and what he was going through and his whole, like, I never want to be here again. And then he's there again. And then I guess it sort of fell apart again. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And basically confirmed his worst fucking fears. And like, I remember being in the middle of that, and where you can tell something's off, but you don't know what it is. And so years later, it's all explained. Like, okay, that's what's up. That's what it was in his head the whole time, and it totally makes sense. That
is awesome. Oh my gosh, that makes me really happy.
So people should listen to the Failure podcast you did.
Yeah, and I've done 2 with Kelly as well. So actually,
it was also. Just one funny thing about that too. When I got the gig, I had never heard of Failure.
Oh wow!
Or You're the Rabbit, and so we were already on the bus, I think, at that point, and Ken said something about something came about their album Fantastic Planet. I was like, oh, I haven't heard it, and he's like, you've never heard Fantastic Planet? I'm like, no. So he burned me a copy on a CD. And like wrote, Fantastic Planet on the CD and gave it to me. I'm like, okay, thanks.
Oh my, there's a whole.
Of course, you listen to it and it's incredible.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my God. But I had no idea.
There is an entire community that would murder you to get their hands on a hand burned copy of Fantastic Planet from Ken Andrews.
They'll be even more mad to know I have no idea where it is. I'm sure I didn't throw it away. I definitely kept it, but who the hell knows where that thing is?
Tell me that. I know I've got like 4,000. Well, right now I've got like 2,500 CDs on my wall, and I've got 2 storage containers with the remainder that I have to find a place for. So
that's there you go.
Yeah. So I got a ton of nonsense on my walls, but anyway, so we were talking about NASA a little bit.
Yeah, something about space.
Yeah,
I don't know.
So what are you doing with NASA? Is it like a full-time gig, or is it a contract gig? You work when you want? How does that work?
Well, it started in 2017. I was able to finagle myself a job as an independent consultant for the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, and basically convinced them that I could put a team of engineers together to help them make. Initially, it was supposed to be a custom design microphone, like from scratch. They wanted like the mic and the preamp and everything to fit inside a 1-inch cube that would be externally housed on the rover. Wow. So all the components would have to survive, external Mars conditions plus deep space for 6 months, and from the ground up, and be tested, And so we said, okay. So
no problem.
And I'm not an engineer. I never studied engineering. I never studied any of this stuff, but I figured I could find people that did. So I said, absolutely. And in that same period of time, I had met a fellow named Brad Avenson, who is an incredibly like painfully smart audio designer, engineer, like the guy designs now seismometers for other planets,
Wow.
Yeah, he's crazy.
Jeez.
And there was a long time when I first met him, and he would just talk, and I would just pretend I understood what he was saying, and to a point where then there's this point of no return, and like not only do you know what he's not talking about, but you haven't know what he's been talking about for the last 10 minutes,
right?
But you have to admit that, but now you also have to ask him to politely retread, because
Yeah, can you explain this like I'm a 4-year-old?
Yeah, and back 5.
Yeah.
So anyway. So he referred me to another fellow named Cesar Garcia, and we're all buddies now too. These guys are all great. And yeah, we authored sort of an evaluation study of what they initially asked us for, which was a custom design thing. We gave them a solution and a price tag based on just, what was reasonable to get it done. And then we didn't hear anything for like 4 months. And I was like devastated. Like, oh my God, is my space career? Because this was like the most thrilling time of my life, and that was right around when we did that first orchestral recording too.
Oh,
so for the first time in my life, I had rock and roll, I had the orchestra stuff, and I had space. And I'm like, my God, this is it. I feel complete.
It's the Jason Achilles trifecta.
Yeah, no, that was it. Like, I was happy. Yes. And then they start falling off. I'm like, no, right. So 4 months later, I kind of reached back out to our supervisor. Dave Gruhl was his name. He's the one who was in charge of this whole thing. And ultimately,
He also played drums for Nirvana at some point.
No, don't worry. He's a lifer scientist, but he's a really interesting guy.
Like Dave Grohl does everything.
No, that's
Okay, different guys.
So then Dave came back to us and he said, all right, well, we can't, there's just not the budget to do it from scratch. We're going to just have to find an off the shelf component. So you guys are going to help me with that. And then he had actually found this company, DPA had, I think probably in that interim, because I don't think this was available when we first did our study, they had created this new device, which is what I'm talking to you through right now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, sounds good, right?
Yeah.
So the microphone, this is actually one of the test models that JPL had.
Oh, and that is so awesome.
I got to borrow it for a little while.
Oh my God, I love that.
So basically that's it. So then we ended up basically helping him select an off-the-shelf component. My guys made the final selection. Dave kind of we narrowed it down, and then he hit me up one day. He's like, all right, which one is it? And so I checked with the guys, like, we're going to do this one. He said, okay. So that's the model they flew, and it worked. Well, wow. It had some problems, but it worked, and it's remarkably still working, which is crazy.
So what you're doing is just recording sounds on Mars.
Well, that's what they're doing. Yeah. So I am not employed.
We're part of it.
Anymore. Well, yeah. So what I am doing now is, so my contract ended when it landed. The day it landed, I was done,
Okay.
And so it's been sending audio back, but I don't have direct access to the audio until it becomes publicly available. And the issue that they had or discovered is that there's a thermal regulatory heat pump mechanism on board that basically is constantly cycling fluid, constantly radiating, to keep the rover thermally regulated. Right. And it uses heat that's generated from the nuke on the ass end. Basically, that's as I understand it. I did not work on any of those systems, so I'm paraphrasing. But the point is, it's fucking noisy, and it's 24/7. It never turns off. And so there's this whining sound that's always there. It's this pervasive whining sound. And it, if you want to hear something like anything really, you have to be able to filter that out. And JPL, at least at the time, didn't have anybody on staff that I guess was a sort of high level audio engineering. And so they've been releasing stuff that's either unfiltered, which is fine, or they filter it. It's filtered internally, but it's, it's not done the way it should be. And so it sounds kind of muddy. And so basically what we do is there's a public archive of all the sounds they release that's really, really, really hard to find. It's like the plans for the destruction of the Earth and the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which were, available for years at Alpha Centauri. And it's lazy humans never bothered to check. You're like, excuse me, what? So NASA releases all these audio files, but literally, if somebody doesn't tell you where they are, you would never have any idea. Wow. So we download those, and then we run them through. I have an engineer that helps me with this, my buddy Mike, and we clean them up so they sound as good as they possibly can sound without altering the source material, just filtering out the background sound as much as possible. And then we repost them. So my website, jasonachilles.com, if you go on there and you scroll to the bottom, there's a link that says listen to the sounds of Mars. and they'll take you to a public SoundCloud page. You can download these. They're free. There's no license. It's
right,
from Mars, but it's the cleaned up versions of what they've released.
Okay, so that brings me to my next question, because
and we just do that. Nobody's paying us to do that. We just do it to do it because somebody's got it.
Goodness of your heart. All right, so my son's best friend is studying aerospace engineering at University of Alabama, Huntsville.
Oh, it's a good place to be doing aerospace. Yeah.
Yeah. So I told his family what you're involved in and asked if he had any questions. So what he's studying for one of his like aero
things.
Yeah, so he's got to figure drag coefficient. Like he's got a whole class in having to figure out drag coefficients.
What grade did you say it was?
He's a sophomore.
Okay. In high school?
No, he's at University of Alabama, Huntsville right now.
Oh, college. I'm sorry. Yeah, right. Oh, that's okay. So he probably knows a lot more than I do about this stuff. But
he had an interesting question, and I wanted to pose it and see if you can answer it, or maybe even tell us how to figure this out or who to contact, because
I can't wait.
He wants to know if the wind noise on Mars is quieter than that of Earth due to its having only 1% of Earth's atmosphere.
It becomes quieter. It falls off over distance much quicker.
Oh, okay. Well, that's
so
a much simpler answer than I was expecting.
Yeah. So there's also, temperature affects sound a little bit, like the speed and things. And then also chemical composition of the atmosphere affects things in a little bit. But by and large, the majority of the effect, as I understand it, is the atmospheric density. Basically, it falls off with distance a lot quicker, and it falls off for high frequencies much quicker. Like super low frequencies, when you're getting close to like infrasound, which is frequency below 20 hertz, which that's basically our human cutoff. We're down to like 13 hertz, or like elephants can talk to each other, or blue whales or whatever. Those frequencies can still travel quite far distances on Mars. But the higher stuff, like pretty much everything above like 10,000 or 10 kilohertz, like falls off almost immediately. But the thing is, though, the other thing though is that you got to think about like, what would you hear on Mars? Well, you would hear I tell people, it's like if you were walking through Death Valley, what would you hear? You would hear yourself walking through Death Valley, right? Some wind, and some wind. That's it.
Okay, that makes.
Assuming there was no trees or cactus or anything, like there's literally just you walking on rocks, and that's it. All you're going to hear is wind. There's nothing else. And so, but there's your footsteps, there's your breathing, there's the rubbing of your pant leg. There's stuff that you don't notice. And then maybe there's things like you could hear rocks slipping if you lose your footing. So there's things like that are useful things to hear.
Yeah.
But they're all generated by you,
Yeah, there's not much happening.
It's basically, as far as we know, it's a dead planet. So, right.
Yeah, as far as we know.
As far as we know. But yeah, honestly, if he wants to reach out to me, if he has any other questions, I'd be happy to.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll let him know. I appreciate that, man. All right. So I have a couple other musical questions for you, because I'm fascinated and have just fallen in love with the music.
That's awesome, man. Thank you.
Billy Joel is Not My Lover.
Yes.
Has forever changed how I think of both Billie Jean and Billy Joel. What is the connection between there?
Sure. So, okay, I guess people should go to my YouTube and watch. I think if you go to my YouTube channel, it's the one that automatically plays. And it's a live recording of us playing it in studio. The only recording of that song that exists is live in studio. It's not on Spotify or anything yet. It's only on YouTube.
Oh, wow.
We will at some point release that version of it. I I've tried re-recording of it, but nothing has captured that magic that we got in that live take that we did. So
it's amazing.
Go to YouTube, Jason Achilles. That's it. That's Billy Joel's On My Lover. So that song, I don't remember where it first came from, but when I was first trying to figure out the looping thing, when that song came out, it was the original, like you'll hear the song, the bass line is a dump, 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 dump on the keyboard, right?
Right.
Well, originally that was an octave, do-ba, 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 and it's the Billy Joel bass line.
Is it It's My Life or something?
Thanks. Yeah, is that, yeah.
It's my life. Leave me alone. I don't care what you say. Yeah. Okay.
So that's where the Billy Joel part came from. And then I think the Billy Jean, I was just, Billy Joel, I kept thinking Billie Jean in my head. Just because it's an amazing song. And for some reason, my brain just kept saying, when I said Billy Joel, I would think Billie Jean. So I thought I just got to put the titles. Well, anyway, I riffed from the lyrics of Billie Jean and put them in Billy Joel's mouth. And off you go. Now, the reason we changed the bass line was because when I was initially doing the bar, 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 it was really hard for the drums. And this was before I was working with the drummer I have now, Forrest, who's amazing. He can play anything. And actually, the guy at the time was really great too. But when I played with a couple different drummers, I noticed that in general, people were having a really hard time following because the drums have to follow the piano.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
When we do these loops, it sounds like everything's following the drums, but that's because the drummer has to be good enough to sound like he's leading, but he's listening.
Okay.
And my drummer Forrest now, he's just incredible. It's really hard to pull that off and make it not just sound good, but feel the way it needs to feel. So I basically squared it off. Instead of doing a 16th note octave, I did 8th note, just stomp, donk, 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 so that no matter what I layered on top of that in the mix, you'd still hear that. The drums could still lock into that.
Okay.
So that's why the Billy Joel reference is now removed from the song, musically, but it kept the name. And then the melody that comes in, I don't know why, but every time I play that melody, I feel like it feels like Superman. Something about the soundtrack to that movie. I don't think it's a riff I don't think it's taken melodically from it, but
okay.
When it's I feel like I see Superman flying around. Yes, Christopher Reeve Superman. We're old school here.
Oh yeah, hell yeah.
But like it just sounds very uplifting and like I don't know how to explain it.
Well, I can never look at Billy Joel the same way again.
Well, that's probably true of many people.
Thank you.
I don't know.
I also love the Van Halen cover you did. Can't Get the Stuff No More, because
thanks,
who
man.
The hell else is covering that song? You and a former podcast guest, Derek Day.
So that's right. So I didn't know until I think today. I think I was talking to Jamie or something. I was talking that I'm meeting Derek tomorrow. We've got a gig coming up, This is going to sound really stupid to say, but I can't tell anybody about it because it's a dumb. Anyway,
well, it'll be over by the time this comes out.
That by the time this podcast comes out, maybe you guys will have heard what we did. But we got this gig coming up. We have to rehearse for, and so I'm meeting him tomorrow. But yes, so the drummer Garrett. He was the one that, if I remember right, well, actually, no, I think I reached out to him. Anyway, we did that. We wanted to do that on the anniversary of Eddie's passing it was me and my buddy on drums. And then I drafted Derek because I didn't know who else could sing like a David Lee Roth Van Halen tune in a way that would be original and still like nobody else could pull that off that I know of.
Nope.
Like that talk singing thing he does, and like, there's who the hell can? Yeah, people clown on Dave, but what he did in that band was absolutely brilliant. And like, I
love David Lee Roth. I'm not a Sammy Hagar fan. I'm not a Van Hagar fan. In fact, I did an entire episode with Jordan Zadarozny from Blink of the Star on David Lee Roth era Van Halen. We did like an hour and a half on just.
Oh, we could talk for. I could easily talk with you for like 5 hours.
Oh yeah, it's the best Van Halen there is. And Derek, I love what Derek's doing. I've got a couple more questions before we wrap up because I saw some interesting things. So I just mentioned the Van Halen cover you guys did, but I saw something.
By the way, the reason we picked that song, and it was done, in celebration of Eddie's celebration of his life. It was done on the occasion of his death. It was supposed to be put out a year after, and I think we put it out 2 years after because it took me forever to edit the thing, and we did it all. So, and it was parts were recorded remotely, all that, right? Because it was the whole COVID thing. But the reason we chose that song is because number one, I had to play guitar in it, and I'm not going to tackle Van Halen songs, but that one was mostly the shreddy parts aren't very shreddy. It's more like a vibe song, and the riff is killer. But also it's an old Van Halen song that nobody knows because it was the last one they released, I think. Well, not counting the record we don't speak of, but
you don't like A Different Kind of Truth?
Let's not.
Oh, so yeah, it's the greatest. So like Me Wise Magic and Can't Get That Stuff.
It was on that. Yeah, it was. Yeah. So it was on that, and it was like they hadn't done anything with Dave in a long time, and they put those two songs on. And it was like, oh my god, this is awesome.
Yeah,
and it's got that same groove from that song Secrets that they did off Diver Down. That the only two times they ever in their career I'm aware of, recorded with that kind of groove. And nobody knows that song, and it's just such a killer and I knew I could play it. I had to totally retune the stretch he does on the intro arpeggiating part is physically impossible for me to play. Like people don't understand like the spider fingers that guy has.
Oh, yeah.
And so I had to retune the guitars just for that section, and like that's why I'm also doing it on the acoustic and the piano. And we gave it a spin, like, the layered thing on it. We make it, but I couldn't
Wow.
It's physically, the skin in my fingers doesn't open that wide. It's insane. Somebody was just talking about they met Eddie once and he shook their hand and it just wrapped around him Eddie wasn't a big guy, but apparently the hands were just crazy. Anyway, but that's what I did because nobody knows that song. To my knowledge, nobody's ever covered it.
I don't know of anybody. I mean, I know Me Wise Magic is the more popular of the two that were on that Greatest Hits. So
good luck covering that song. She's with the Trans Tram and all that stuff. But we never released the song either. Maybe we should put it out on Spotify.
That'd be amazing.
I'm gonna have to get pay for the rights, but that's not too bad.
So, what is the Southern Swamp album that I saw?
Some bullshit that shouldn't be on there. So I have that was bad bookkeeping on my part. I have a old Spotify account or online account that is my full name, Jason Achilles Mazilis. And during pandemic, I was like, okay, I got to consolidate my stuff. I created the Jason Achilles account. And that's the YouTube. That's the one where all this stuff goes. I still haven't shut down the Jason Achilles Mazilis one. And occasionally somebody who's looking too damn hard, like yourself, will find it. And
you want to know where I found it? YouTube.
Fucking YouTube.
Yep.
So, and it's probably on YouTube forever now. Great.
Probably.
So I do a lot of music licensing work with friends of mine for just a couple extra bucks, shits and giggles.
Okay.
And I'll get together. We'll record. I'll go over there. We'll record like 3 tracks in 2 hours. Zip it, seal it, send it, forget it. and it's just fun to do. And it's stuff that goes for music publishing, for like the background music in, Duck Dynasty or some crap. Just meaningless music for like stupid stuff, to just, get a little licensing money rolling, in, which I would never do with the stuff I care about, right? Like I'm open to licensing, but it's not going to be for fucking Duck Dynasty, trailers. So unless they pay really well, no.
Hey, man, those duck calls bring in some bucks apparently.
So So one of them somehow, she accidentally, one of the composers in the group accidentally like tagged my name on it, because we have a bullshit band name that we create all this stuff under. So none of that's nobody's ever supposed to hear that, but know that it's us, because man's got to make a living.
Hey,
so that's my musical prostitution ring, and somehow that it got leaked out there, and so I mean it's cool tracks, it's fine, but it's sounds cool.
I like it. Just I was always a big fan of Steve Vai, and he's got this mystery archive series that he's done, and he's got this one where he's got a song in that swampy vein. And it's different from anything else I've ever heard him do, but I
did
like it.
Did he create it to be an artistic thing, or to be a, tripe,
I don't
disposable
know.
Bullshit, because that's what we did. I feel like he probably did it with serious intent,
Probably.
Steve Vai, and he's a serious guy, And he doesn't need the waggle bucks that we needed.
Yeah, that's a good point. So the last thing I wanted to ask you about,
you did some deep diving if you found that thing.
Well, hey, that's what sets my podcast apart for both of my listeners. So
it's the performance anxiety, it should be guest anxiety.
It's my performance anxiety, because I'm always thinking I don't want this to be like every other interview you've ever had. So
you're making me anxious. You're doing a good job.
Excellent. Well, I do have a CBD sponsor, so if use the code performance ANX and you get 15% off your order. Pure
Everybody
Spectrum.
got that performance code ANX, 50% off your next order
of CBD anything.
CBD.
So you're working currently on creating
got that part out too.
From my understanding, from the little bit of information you sent me, you're working on creating a touring planetary show. How does that work?
I've been working on this. This is an idea I've had for it was 2019 when I first thought of this, and the Mars rover still hadn't landed yet, but we'd done the work at that point, and I felt like, well, I feel at least it's a good story to tell people, whether or not, at that point we didn't know if it would work or not. And honestly, I'm like, well, if it lands and it doesn't work, then my opportunity to tell that story is done. Right. So I was trying to milk it as much as I could. And it's just kind of being like an inspiring story, really for kids and stuff. They're like, hey, I came from a place of musical background with no engineering, official engineering study or anything. I mean, you learn things from just your own exploration, but the idea that just because you didn't come from that background, it doesn't mean you can't do these things, especially for kids. And the reason that I discovered that my story in particular was sort of relevant to, especially to young people, is that almost every kid experiences some sort of music education at some point, whether it's singing or tuba or, or, drumming to the sound of their thwacking their buddies on the head or something. But,
done that. Yeah.
I've literally only in my life ever in my one time met somebody who just said, I don't like music. I was like, what? I heard that from one person one time.
I think you've met the Antichrist.
It was weird. Yeah. I was like, So
go away.
Well, yeah, it was seriously, we're like, what? So, but the idea that that I could share this common experience with 8-year-olds up to any age, and hey, I came from that same place and I do this. There's no reason you should feel that this is inaccessible. If you want to do that stuff, you're not smart enough, that you're not, or and just because, or I didn't, I'm not studying orbital mechanics by the time I'm 15, I could never possibly go don't worry. Especially now you could be a botanist and there's plenty of gigs. I was just talking to this guy who's working with a group that's doing like nutrient cycling for Martian soil.
Oh, wow.
It's the farthest thing from another planet you could be doing.
Yeah.
But these are things that, so like if you want to be involved in space, it does not matter your background. If you have the interest, almost certainly whatever your interest or field or expertise is, there's some avenue to that line of work. So that's the point. So I started giving talks about that, and then really got interested in the idea of being able to do more of an immersive presentation where you're in a planetarium, and instead of a screen behind you, you have a wraparound screen and you're talking about space and shit. So like project more things in that area, and make it more experiential thing. So it's not just a lecture, it's an experience too. And then I thought, well, why don't I play as part of it too? I'm talking about music and being a musician. So talk for the first half and then perform for the second half. And then some buddies of mine and I started recording rocket launches up at Vandenberg Space Force Base, a couple hours north of LA. And we started getting these really awesome recordings. So, well, maybe we should show rocket launches too, and people can experience that like they're there,
That's
so
awesome.
All this stuff together is what I'm trying to put together into an immersive planetarium style or dome style. I guess immersive has kind of become this buzzword lately, but like truly like an immersive audio learning, fun experience. And, if you just want to go and get stoned, that works too.
Like Pink Floyd Laser Light Show.
Exactly. And so I got this guy who designed a lot of like these he's done Pink Floyd dome shows and stuff like that. And,
wow.
And so he's doing some footage for me, and it's getting there, but I keep hitting like these walls of just the worst luck, and like literally people almost dying that were trying to help me out with this thing. And like, so it's been one stumble after another, but there's getting some legs on it now. And I think it might finally come together this year. So we'll see.
Oh man, we'll have to keep an eye on that because that sounds incredible. I shot a weird show at the end of last year. Barrett Martin, the drummer for Screaming Trees.
Okay.
He did a tour where it was half like lecture, half music. So
really,
yeah, it was really wild.
That's exactly. I would actually like to. Could you send me that?
I can
link to it or something.
If I can find it, because I saw it live, and it was. So what he would do is he would put together a video, and then he would discuss a chapter of his life, and it's some experience that he had, and then he would show a video pertaining to it, and then he would play with backing tracks. So he would play like he would play a Mad Season song, but he would be playing the drums for it, but the rest of the track was pre-recorded. And he did the same with some other stuff from his discography. And
what's his name?
Barrett Martin.
I'm gonna look this up.
Yeah, he looks like a Grizzly Adams meets Gandalf. So that'll help you find him. But he was the drummer for Screaming Trees, for Skin Yard.
Oh, wow, yeah.
For Mad Season, Mad Season's like my favorite.
I want to look this guy up. No, that sounds really cool.
Yeah.
It'd be cool to see somebody who's done something even remotely like that, because that's not dissimilar from what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and I'm trying to get him on the podcast, and I was talking to his manager at the show, and they're like, yeah, I would love to do a podcast. And he's like, here's my email. And I email him, and I haven't heard a word for 2 months. So.
One Man Singing Earth Show.
Yes, that's it.
There we go.
So there may be some stuff on YouTube.
That was 2023. So
yeah, so there may be some stuff on YouTube. I took stills, so
that's awesome.
I got a couple. Yeah, I got a couple of shots on my Instagram page. But other than that, so
he looks like Chris Christopherson before he got killed.
Yeah.
in Blade. Yeah. Or we thought he got killed. How did he survive that? Like they somehow made he wasn't dead. Like he really got died. Yeah.
I don't know. Well, how can people follow you? What's the best way for anybody interested in any of the work you're doing, whether it's science-y or music-y? What's the best way for people to find you?
If they just want the music, Spotify or YouTube Music, any of that stuff, just Jason Achilles is easiest. I'm the only one out there that's Jason Achilles, which is helpful that I'm aware of. And you can find me on Instagram. It's my full name on Instagram, but I got the little blue checky thing, so that helps. YouTube, the YouTube is actually also Jason Achilles. And then if you want all the space stuff as well, it's all linked up on the website. I just made it easier, jasonachilles.com. And like, if you scroll, especially if you scroll to the bottom of the page, you'll see video from rocket launches we've done and recorded. Yeah. So me and my friend, I got a buddy at JPL and another buddy at Skywalker Sound. And that's the three of us are the group. And we do these recordings together, the camera, the audio, the edit,
Yeah.
Putting it all together. So that's all there. The sounds of the Martian sounds that we've cleaned up around there. That's probably the best. Yeah. So just Jason Achilles, you'll find everything eventually.
Well, I love where your space exploration and your music intersect on songs like Stratus and Soft Landing. Just fantastic tracks. I've been playing them over and over again. It's really awesome.
The Soft Landing one was actually, so I'm a big fan of animation, especially like the movie Heavy Metal, the original from way back when, that was produced by, oh God, I'm totally blanking on his name now. Oh crap, this is embarrassing. Who produced Ivan Reitman? So Heavy Metal was produced by Ivan Reitman.
Oh, I never realized
it wasn't directed by him, but he produced it. And it took a lot of the artists that were, originally that were contributed to Heavy Metal magazine. But the way they use the music with the animation in that film is incredible. And, I remember seeing it as a kid. And of course, it's like really fucked up. There's lots of like pretty gory death. And like, it's not a kid's movie. It's animated, but it's not, you're like, whoa, this is insane. And I always kind of love that, just animation from there. And then so when I was on tour for that first part of that tour with Cantrell in 2022, he had posters done up for each show by different artists.
Oh, yeah.
And there was a couple posters that stood out to me, and I realized they were the same artist. So I found that artist, reached out, and it turns out it was this like 24-year-old girl named Sketchy. Well, she goes by Sketchy Goat. She's amazing, phenomenal. And she's now, her career is like really taken off.
Oh, that's awesome.
She's doing stuff for Nancy Wilson now from Heart, but she did a lot of artwork on that tour, and so she did the artwork. She did all the animation for the video for Soft Landing, which was
sweet.
Video I put out recently, and it was a storyline I'd had in my head for. Well, I just wanted to have an alien dance party like in the end of Thriller, Michael Jackson, but like aliens.
Nice.
So that's where it came from. Yeah, that's where that idea started. I was like, all right, I don't want to give her too much, I want to give her as much freedom as possible. But I'm like, I want an alien dance party. I want it to involve some farmers that are like seeing some shit and they don't know what's up and like a crash. So we kind of figured out a little storyline. And I think she was the one who worked it out that they were actually building. They crash land, but when they go to investigate, they're actually building a dance hall. They just want a party.
That is awesome.
So but they think they're going to get probed, and I won't see how it ends, but
I love it.
Yeah. So we put that together. So that's kind of, but she also was she and I are both the fans of this similar kind of stuff, like old school animation things and artists and like D&D art and stuff like that.
So thank you for spending so much time with me. This has been a blast. I've really enjoyed it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. And I'm so looking forward to the Spinal Tap tribute and hearing what you do with it.
I hope the mix, like I said, we're still only halfway through, but we got Dizzy's vocal on there and Ryan Brown from Dweezil Zappa's band that used to be my band before he got stolen from me. He played drums on it. The drums actually that we recorded. So we're doing Sex Farm, right? And like Spinal Tap drums have to sound like they're played by a caveman.
Oh yeah.
And I've got like one of the, Ryan can literally play anything. And I recorded him on tape, again, no click, no nothing, just go for it. But I was like, all right, I need you to somehow like you need to sound like you don't know how to play drums, but then there's like these like weird little moments of brilliance where you're like, you'll have some crazy good fill, but then go back to this like half, like almost falling off the beat, like, duh, you know? And he, of course, did it in like 2 or 3 takes.
Oh, it's amazing. I cannot wait to hear this.
So, it's, yeah.
All right. Well, dude, thank you so much for everything.
Thanks for all the insightful shit and like digging it up and giving a crap, man. That was really sweet of you.
Oh, well, I love this shit. This is why I do the podcast. So, and meeting awesome people like yourself. It's amazing.
Well, those people are assholes. All right, brother.
All right, man. I'll talk to you later.